Welcome to my program, Mr. Bobby Rechnitz. It's the second time I conduct interview with you. You are a prominent Los Angeles-based philanthropist and a successful real estate developer. You have also a big impact on Israeli-American relations. Now it's an important time for Israel and its relation with the United States. This would be my first question. We are in a critical situation now. What you can tell us about it?
Well, I can tell you that I personally, together with a large group of people, many people that I know in the private sector, have been spending time in Washington lobbying Congress and the Senate to pass supportive pro-Israel resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that poll after poll shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans support Israel, and they understand Congress and the elected officials in government and the senators. They understand that they represent the will of the American people. So I believe that the support is and will continue to be bipartisan, notwithstanding several extreme elements on the left of the Democratic Party that try to exercise their leverage to actually not only project anti-Israel purposes, but basically anti-American, anti-democratic purposes. So I believe that those things will come to pass, and we're going to see a major difference come this election, a different swing in the country come this November.
You mentioned you're lobbying Congress to pass the Hamas International Financing Prevention Act. So can you tell us more about your effort here and how we can deal with Hamas? In the situation is so hard to deal with. We have to make differences between Hamas as Hamas, a terrorist organization, and the Palestinian people. How do you say about this?
Well, I believe, most Western democracies understand that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Their charter calls for the destruction of an entire country, of an entire nation, of an entire religion. So I don't think there's much problem creating a distinction between Hamas and the Palestinians, because I believe a true Palestinian citizen who has a reasonable outlook on life also is oppressed by Hamas. The problem is that it's going to take a generation. It's going to take a generation of a new government there that's going to provide education like you see in the other Gulf states, where Israel is part of the curriculum and the agenda, and there's nothing anti-Semitic in there. It's going to take a generation in the United States where universities stop receiving funding from foreign organizations and stop becoming foreign agents. For example, 20, 30 years ago, you saw universities in the oddest places in the Midwest opening chairs on Islamic studies. If it would have been a chair in Islamic study and it would have been something that's culturally diverse, everyone would support it. The problem is those chairs in Islamic studies were created to promote anti-democratic and anti-Western values. And today, the countries like Qatar that invested, they're getting a wonderful return on their investment because they're creating a small revolution with a fringe element and American students around the campuses. So it's going to take a generation. You have to educate. First, it's through education, not through military action. Military action is defensive. Israel finds itself in a situation where they have no choice to protect themselves. But I think action has to be taken on a legislative level in the United States.
Do you think that the Biden administration is dealing well with the universities' demonstrations? Is there any effort to tell about, or it's like they don't know how to deal with that? It's a strange situation.
I believe that the Biden administration is trying to please everyone at all sides. And true leadership means taking a position, not winning a popularity contest. But unfortunately, we're in the year 2024 when there's an election coming up. So you see President Biden, Leader Schumer, and others making decisions based on re-election rather than what's good for the American people. And I think that's just very sad. And I think in the end, it may cost them the election.
In the past, you worked also on the Iron Dome legislation. Do you think now Israel will get the weapons and the deals to defend itself from this administration, or there will be some excuses or like delays in some in the commitment? Do you think the Biden administration is committed to protect Israel this time?
I believe that the Biden administration, as President Biden once said, if there was no Israel, we'd have to create it. I believe that his heart and intentions are in the right place. But what I just mentioned about the election is, unfortunately, he's not showing the type of leadership that he should be showing. you must stand up for an ally. You must stand up for a friend and a democratic ally. The relationship between Israel and the United States is mutually beneficial. Each side needs the other. And I think that should be very clear. And the aid package that goes to Israel is not a gift. The annual aid package that goes to Israel allows them to buy military hardware from the United States and to keep our economy going here. And I think it's a matter also of educating members of Congress. But I don't believe that any act of Congress would condition Israel with weapons. As you know, the weapons package now that was being held back by President Biden, that was an act of Congress. And I don't think that what he's doing is constitutional. So he's definitely handling it in a very poor manner.
What do you think about the Saudi Arabia stance to admit and accept two-state solutions and give the Palestinian people their rights to live in their land? What we should do? The Abrahamic Accords made a great job in the Middle East, but it should be expanded to Saudi Arabia, and there is this condition that Saudi is definitive about it. What you can tell us?
I believe that Israel and Saudi Arabia have been very close to establishing the agreement, the Abraham Accords agreement. The Abraham Accords agreement with the other countries never could have taken place without the blessing of Saudi Arabia. That's my belief. I have visited the Gulf region. I visit the Gulf region regularly. And, when President Obama went and created the Arab Spring and made a speech in Cairo, he's the true architect of the Abraham Accords because the countries in the Gulf region realized you can no longer count on the United States as an ally. And that sent a terrible message to the world. And that's the message being sent by President Biden today. Excuse me. But I do believe that Saudi Arabia is close to peace. And I believe that officially they want to stand up for for the fellow Arabs and to say that, excuse me, that a two-state solution is important. I personally don't believe that the two-state solution or the Palestinian issue will much longer be an obstacle. I believe that with a two-state solution or not, I believe Saudi Arabia will move forward. There are mutual interests. There's the governing of the Gaza area after the war. And it's my belief that the Abraham Accords countries should be the ones to step in, to monitor, to build the infrastructure, to create the educational institution, to make sure there's no pay to slay by Abbas and Fatah. And I think they have to model it after their own societies where people live in peace, harmony, and mutual respect.
To create such a more stability in Gaza. My question is about how we can, let's talk about your relationship with Ronald Lauder, the president of the World Jewish Congress. What kind of relationship is going on between you and this organization in particular?
I'm not involved with your World Jewish Congress. I had the privilege to meet Ron Lauder several years ago at a few different meetings, a board meeting in his office on the university, where we both sat on the board of the Ariel University. I met through some philanthropic causes. He's a man for whom I have great respect, although we have different political views. But we don't have a relationship outside of something very cordial, and I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, my question is, do you think that Israel is involved in the death or the assassination of President Raisi, and how the role of Iran will change after his disappearance from the political stage? What you can see, what is the future of Iran in that case?
I believe that Iran suffered a minor blow with the loss of President Raisi. It's interesting to me that 3 helicopters would be flying in unison back to Iran, and only when the other 2 landed did they realize the 3rd helicopter was gone. We've learned historically never to trust the Iranians. Don't trust their words, only look at their actions. The only person that stood to gain with this is Khamenei. And since the Ayatollahs came to power and rose in Iran by getting rid of monarchies and getting rid of the Shah, there is no way that he could groom his son to take over as president. So I think it's very convenient that President Raisi, the butcher of Iran, met the type of death that he caused for so many other people, being so horribly killed. I think it's a tragedy anytime anybody loses a life. But I wouldn't be surprised if Iran was behind this, because there are tribal wars, and Khamenei wants to at least build his own legacy. And this way, I think he could move his son in for the next president. I don't believe Israel has any fingerprints on it. They had nothing to gain from it.
Yeah, it's an internal issue. My last question in this interview is how do you see the war in Gaza will influence the American or the presidential elections this year? And if you can tell us at the end your thoughts on Israel's move onto Rafah.
So I believe that the American elections are very much influenced. The example that we just spoke about, President Biden withheld the 2,000-pound bombs,
Mm,
withheld shipping of that to win an election. He believes in somehow appeasing some of the extreme
mm,
Muslim voters who are not voting as Americans, but they're voting against the United States by saying uncommitted. All sorts of immigrants come to this country. My parents came here from Europe. They were Holocaust survivors. When they come to the United States, it's a gift and a blessing. We should be thankful. We should exercise our democratic rights and vote. So voting uncommitted
mm,
or voting anti-American is just not something that is really going to build and further the principles and the values
mm.
that we have in this country. I
Yeah.
believe that it does play a major role. I think it's going to be a defining factor. And I believe that many Democrats who had never voted Republican before, many Democratic Jews, for example, in Pennsylvania, you
Mm,
have Biden won the last election by 80,000 votes, but you have 300,000 Jews there. I
mm,
don't believe that they're going to continue to vote
mm,
for an administration
mm.
that handicaps their national homeland in a country which is the only democratic ally we have in the Middle East.
And the situation in Rafah is so sensitive, especially it affects the relations between Egypt and Israel. Can you tell us your thoughts or your approach?
It's interesting because Israel protects Egypt at the Rafah border, at the Rafah crossing. And while we may have not the warmest of agreements between the two countries, they have mutual interest. The difference between Israel and Egypt is Israel admits the citizens from Gaza to come in and to work during the day and gives them rights, where Egypt won't allow one single soul to come in. And
Mm,
that's very telling. And there's something we should learn from that. If they don't want to take in the people from Gaza, why does Israel always have to do the world's dirty work? So
mm.
I believe that Egypt and Israel will continue to cooperate. I believe that there has to be a solution for Gaza, but the two-state solution can't even exist until we know who the other state is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Bobby Rechnitz. You're always welcome, and you have always something good and
Thank you.
want to tell us to tell our audience. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.